Hello and welcome to the VKViewer demonstration video. Before we get into the VKViewer software, I'm just going to briefly talk about the source of the valve data in VKViewer. Why? Because you cannot print a complete test certificate from an ERP program. No ERP program contains anywhere close to enough detail about your valve repairs to print a test certificate. Whether it's nameplate data, as received, previous repair, disassembly, conversions, valves beyond economical repair, assembly data, critical dimensions, test data, none of that is kept in any kind of depth in any ERP program. VKViewer has that data. Why? Because all GE Dresser authorized GTCs and marks and Dresser Direct operations are required to use a program called ValveKeep. It's that ValveKeep program into which they enter all your valve data. So whether it's a sale, repair, test, or any kind of event that has occurred to your valves, the detailed information about that event is being input into ValveKeep by certified repair centers. ValveKeep is purpose-built for valves and valve maintenance, as well as all reporting and analytical functions associated with that. The ValveKeep software is very powerful and has been in use at many of the authorized channel partners since the mid-1990s. VKViewer, which is what we're looking at today, it is the program that allows you, the owner of the valve, to access and benefit from the data your local GE Dresser Consolidated or Mason-Elin channel partner is keeping on your valves. The original VKViewer was released around 2002. In 2008, we began redevelopment of version 6. In the redesign of VKViewer 6, we used all of the knowledge we had gained from our users and from ourselves from both the VKViewer 5 and ValveKeep programs. So VKViewer 6 is really an embodiment of over 15 years of knowledge from our users and from us as a manufacturer, and we're delivering it to you in a web-enabled package that is second to none. The one important thing to remember about ValveKeep and VKViewer is the level of detail of the data inside of them. In the ValveKeep program, the authorized repair center is keeping an unprecedented amount of data. Images, critical dimensions, as shipped, as received, parts replaced, testing, assembly, additional documents, pre-testing, everything and anything you can imagine about your valves is being tracked inside of ValveKeep. That's accessible to you with VKViewer. If you are running an ERP program at your facility, you cannot print a thorough test certificate from it. There simply is not enough data inside the ERP program to print a detailed and accurate test report. VKViewer, used in conjunction with your GTC or mark, allows you the level of detail you require for compliance, that you need for audits, that you need for insurance requirements, and that you need for your own peace of mind at your facility. Summarized, this means all your valve assets, regardless of kind or manufacturer, are, and have been, documented by your GTC, mark, or Dresser Direct repair center for years without you needing to input a single keystroke. They have more detailed data on the life history of your valves than you do. And they are not only trained on how to track and input this data, they're audited by GE. You simply cannot get this level of service, detailed documentation, and an analytical and reporting power anywhere else. Logging into VKViewer is a breeze. You'll either access a link on your Green Tag Center or Mark or Dresser Direct website to get to VKViewer, or you might be given a URL to access it directly. We suggest running VKViewer inside of Chrome or Firefox. Internet Explorer version 8 or newer will run just as well, but it's a bit slower than Chrome. There are two ways to log into VKViewer. The most common way is to use a user ID and password given to you by the GTC, Mark, or Dresser Direct office. These are secure logins that only you will know and allow you to access only your data. The other way to log into VKViewer is with a quick access code. The idea behind this is, if there's a single specific valve you're investigating and you want to directly access only that valve to print a repair report or see images of parts replaced or review the test data, and you're working with someone at your repair center, they can give you an access code that will give you immediate access to only that valve. It's a nice simple way to cut through all of the searching and analysis functions available and just simply take a look at the one valve in question. So let's go ahead and let's log into VKViewer and let's take a look around. Once you've logged into VKViewer, you'll be on the valve tree. The valve tree is the home base where you will operate from. Most of what you want to do is available here on this tab, although there are other ways to look at the data, including a spreadsheet view. Before we take a closer look at the valve tree page, let's talk for a moment about the hierarchy of the data. ValveKeep and VKViewer have the data organized by owner and by plant. That's the hierarchy of the data. Owner is the customer, or you, the person that owns the valve, and the plants are the physical locations that you have. So your valves are broken down by owner and by plant. If we click the plus beside a plant, it will open up to all of your valves. Your valve assets are shown here as they would be inside of any instrument index. Each valve is made up of a number of events. Here you see we're on PSV Demo 1. If I open up PSV Demo 1, you'll see that there are 4 events related to that valve. There was a repair in 04, 05, 07, and 2010. The 3 that are 04, 05, and 07, those are in ValveKeep terms historical events. The 2010 is called the most recent. Most recent is the way that your valve is today in your facility. So every valve inside of VKViewer has a most recent event, and that is how the valve is today in your facility. All other repair events or test events are known as historicals. That's how the data is broken down. Looking further at our tree, if we open up a single event, for example the most recent here of PSV Demo 1, you'll notice that we can see any attachments that were made to the repair, any images that were taken of the repair, and any of the parts associated with the repair. So if we open up the images, for example, you'll see the images that were taken as part of the repair process. Double clicking on one of those images will open it up inside of another tab in our browser. The image command has all of the images taken across the bottom in thumbnails, and it displays them larger in the middle of the screen. An interesting command we can do from here is called the image compare. If I click image compare, on the left hand side and the right hand side, I select the events that I want to see the repair images from. Over on the left hand side, I'm looking at the events from the most recent repair, the one that was done in 2012, how our valve is in the field today. And over here on the right hand side, I'm looking at the repair from 2007. The image compare is an incredibly powerful command, allowing you to take a look at all of the pictures of parts replaced or incoming and shipped pictures of your repairs. Closing those puts me back on my valve tree page. Inside of the attachments command, you will see that I have the PDFs or the XLSs or the Word files that have been associated with this repair and added to the repair inside of ValveKeep. Yes, anything they want to attach to further detail your repair can be added, and you can view it here. If I want to take a look at the hydrostatic test report, I double click it and the generics tab will open up. The generics tab has a grid that shows me all of the PDFs or XLS or additional files attached. Clicking on the details icon inside of the grid gives me the details about that one single attachment. I can open the attachment and view it if I want. Clicking open downloads it from the database, puts it into my browser, and allows me to then open it up and take a look at it. So there's the hydrostatic test report that was done on the parts that were replaced for this repair. Closing the generic attachments brings me back to my valve tree, and the last folder in my valve tree that we're going to look at is the parts. So these will be the parts that were touched or replaced during the repair event. Double clicking on a part opens up a tab that has all of the list of parts in a spreadsheet grid. Again, this grid is a summary. The summaries can be opened up to the details of each one of the parts, and that is done by clicking the detail button that I did just there, and you can see the information about the part, the condition that it was received in, the work that was performed on it, and if there's any recommendation for it next time. The repair center is keeping track of recommendations to the parts. So if a part is on the borderline of being usable, but it could be because its tolerances were within limits, they can document that the next outage the part should be repaired. This is a massively powerful thing inside of the VKViewer software. You can look at all of the parts that need to be repaired and need to be replaced in upcoming outages. Closing the parts form brings me back to the tree, and that's a quick look at the data inside the tree. We have our owner and our plant, which is the hierarchy of the data, and then all the valves underneath it. Each valve is made up of numerous events, and the most recent event in VK terms or VKViewer terms is the way that the valve is today out in the field. Again, with this tree being an instrument index, if I close up the PSV Demo 1 relief valve that I was looking at, if I scroll down through the list of instruments that I have in my plant, towards the bottom of the list you'll see other kinds of instruments. Here we have a control valve, and it has 3 events performed to it as well: 2008, 2010, 2012. Those are also visible here in the lifeline of the valve tree valve level. All of our instruments are here. All manufacturers of valves, all valve assets are all inside of your plant. Whether it's a control valve, a line valve, a manual valve, an electric actuator, it doesn't matter what kind of valve asset it is here in our tree. I'm going to close up the valves that I had opened, and then I'm going to scroll back up to the top, and we're going to talk briefly about the icons that we're looking at here in our tree. You'll notice that PSV Demo 1, its icon is an alarm clock ringing. That means that this valve is past due for maintenance. The next valve down, that's the relief valve symbol from a P&ID CAD package. All of our icons are from P&ID CAD packages, and they all look like they should. That tells us that this valve is not past due and is not coming due inside of your defined range in the future. So, alarm clock ringing means it's past due. The standard icon from a CAD package P&ID, those icons, they are just the instrument itself. That's an interesting way to look at our valves, but it's right now set up to go by owner and by plant. What about by the most common way that you might want to look at your valves by unit? Up here in the valve tree functions, you'll notice that I checked the include unit level. When I did that, VKViewer rebuilt my tree, and if I go back to my plant that I'm interested in and I open it up, you'll see that now all of my valves are broken down by unit. So you can include a unit level if you want or not. We can also include an equipment type level. The equipment type level causes the VKViewer tree to be rebuilt, and when it's rebuilt we can open it up, and when we open it up you will see that we now have the 4 different equipment types that are inside of ValveKeep and VKViewer. We have our owner, our plant, our unit, and then control valves, relief devices which include tank vents, rupture discs, flame arresters, and other relief valves, line or manual valves, and electric or motor actuators for manual valves. Those are the 4 equipment types that we keep track of inside of VK and VKViewer. So these checkboxes allow us to very quickly and very easily add different leveling to our instrument index. Further exploring our valve tree page, down here in the lower left you'll notice that we have a to-do list. To-do items are added by the GTC Mark or Dresser Direct Repair Center about outstanding issues with your valve. You can interact with the repair facility through this to-do list as they can interact with you. For example, let's suppose that the GTC or Mark had a part that they wanted to replace on a valve being repaired. They could take images of it and then make a note of it in the to-do list. When you log into VKViewer, you would be able to find this to-do item, take a look at the images of the part, and then issue approval. These to-do items are a powerful way for you to interact with the GTC or Mark and for them to keep you up to date on your turnaround or your repairs. Here, there are many other commands allowing us to further investigate to-dos and refine the grid list of to-dos. There is also a to-do list function. When clicking on the list, it opens up a new form, and that form shows us all of the to-dos that we have that we may want to address. Looking further at the valve tree page, you'll notice across the top there are a few buttons. We can go into the owner and plant command, which is essentially the list of owners and plants that we have access to. We're on the valve tree now. There's a repair list, which is essentially a spreadsheet view of all of the valves that we're interested in. We can keep track of locations and the spare valves that can work in a given location. We can access the loops command, which allows us to keep track of all of the valves, vessels, instrumentation in any P&ID loop or process safety management protected system. The turnaround cloud is the turnaround manager, and this is an incredibly powerful function inside of VKViewer. And then finally we can keep general notes. We will take a look at these functions later on in this demo and in future demo videos. In the top right hand corner we have the logo button, ability to access our user preferences, and the help system. Here in the top right hand corner is the current working owner and plant. Inside of VKViewer we're always working with something, or we're always looking at the valves for some owner and plant. In VKViewer terms, that's the working owner and plant, and it's always shown up here as this is a critical piece of information. The final group of buttons along the top are a global find, which you'll often use when you're searching for a single valve. It's a very easy way to find any given valve. Analysis button, which allows us to access the analytical functions inside of VKViewer. The valve calendar, which is the visual calendar planning tool that is a great way to take a look at valves that are coming due, past due, or when repairs were performed. The view function allows us to take a look at several different kinds of views that are pre-programmed into VKViewer that are beneficial to you. You can always send an email to the repair facility about something that you have a question on, and of course we can generate a report. We'll quickly take a look at the global find command. Clicking global find brings me to the global find command, in which I tell VKViewer what kind of equipment I want to search: relief devices, control valves, line valves, electric actuators, what field I want to search by, and of course the information that I want to look for. So in this case I'm going to put in PSV demo, and you notice I don't need spaces or dashes. I click the find button, and all of the valves found that match my requirement are shown. I can quickly generate a report, or I can actually move to that repair and take a look at it in further detail. For now, I'm just going to go back to my valve tree command. The valve tree is also a way that you can find your valves, and in fact it's probably visually more pleasing than the find command. Typically you would launch VKViewer, you would open up your training, you would open up your plant to Livingston. In other words, you'd find the owner and plant you want to work in. You would find the valve in question, for example PSV Demo 1. You would find the event, most likely the most recent, because that's the repair that was just performed. And in this case, let's suppose all we really wanted to do was generate a test report. I'll click the report button, I will click the datasheet button, and VKViewer goes out to the server. It gets the custom generated report that is in use at our GTC or MARC, and it generates it, downloads it to our local computer, and then we can open up the PDF and it's displayed. So that is a very quick way to get a test certificate or a datasheet printed out inside of VKViewer. You launch VKViewer, you go in, you find your owner in your plant that you want to work in, you go and locate the valve, find the event you're interested in, and you print a report. So far we've talked a lot about finding the valve, and we've talked about doing reports and other commands we can do from this valve tree, but what about the actual repair data itself? Inside of every plant we have our valves. Our valves are made up of events, and these events have associated with them what VKViewer calls a details form. So if I find the valve in the repair that I'm interested in, and I double click on that repair, the details form for that repair will open up. In this case I'm looking at a relief valve, PSV Demo 1, and this relief valve's detail form is now shown. The details forms have tabs across the top that go in the general process that is the workflow inside the repair facility. So we have tabs for order info, general, config, nameplate data, and so on. Each one of these tabs contains data associated with that step in the repair process. The general tab, for example, has all of the descriptive data about the valve that typically doesn't change from event to event. Things like the sizing basis, the manufacturer, the model number, the serial number. You'll notice that we have an as received and we have as shipped sections. So we keep track of all of the valve data as it was received and as it was shipped. Same thing on the valve configuration, as received and as shipped. Here we have model number, and because we're on relief devices, we have orifice designation, inlet configuration, material configuration, all of the data of that nature. On the nameplates tab, we have the original manufacturer's nameplate, the previous repair nameplate, and the current process conditions. Next is the work performed and as received tab. So here we have the reason why the valve is in for maintenance, we have the as found conditions, and we have the pretest details. This is incredibly important for relief valves. Here you notice that we have it pre-tested at 738 psi. This valve was cold diffed at 735 psi, giving us 100.4% pre-pop versus the cold diff. This is a very important number for you because it tells you how the valve was behaving or would have behaved in the field. Working further through the tabs, we have the parts and critical dimensions, we have the final test data, we have the quality control and checklist items, and then we have a side-by-side summary view. So this gives you a nice detail of as received and as shipped for all of the steps of the repair process. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close my details form for this relief device event, and I'm back on my valve tree. Every event to every valve has an associated details form. There we took a look at the relief device PSV Demo 1 and we saw its detail form. If I come down now, and let's suppose that we had launched VKViewer looking for information about our control valve CV Demo 1. After going into my valve tree and finding CV Demo 1, I would find the repair that I'm interested in, double click on that repair, and again my details form opens in another tab. So quickly, the control valve details forms, which are really similar to the relief valve ones, have tabs across the top, and each tab contains information that is related to that step in the repair procedure. We have order info, general, as received, valve configuration, actuator positioner transducer. So if the valve came in without a smart positioner and then it left with a smart positioner, we would document that information here. Measured dimensions, parts information, test information, and of course on the test information and the as received information we do a calibration or functional test and we record that data here as well. We have quality control information, and then we have a side-by-side which allows me to take a look at the general valve configuration and all of the accessories information as received versus as shipped. So that's the details form for a control valve. I'm going to close out of the details form for it and I'm back on my valve tree. Line valves and electric actuators and manual valves have their own details forms as well. These detail forms typically contain between 300 and 400 discrete data points about each repair or test or sale event to every valve that the GTC Mark or Dresser Direct office is keeping about your valves. This is an insane amount of data documenting your valves in a way that you do not document them yourself in-house. And all this is being done by your local GE Dresser channel partner or direct office. When we take a look at a valve, we know this is our valve level because this is showing us what the valve is inside of our tree. When we open up our valve level, we have our event levels. The data points displayed on each of these levels can be set. Here we have a trees columns command, and if I click on it, it allows me to select from any data point that we saw on those detail forms and add that data point to either the valve level or the event level of my tree. VKViewer is a fully commercialized application. The help system, the functionality, this is all commercial grade functionality. This is not a spreadsheet of valves saved out to the internet that you're accessing. This is a full web application. That, in summary, is the valve tree tab. I'm going to close off my CV Demo 1. We'll go back up to our top of our tree and we will take a look at some other aspects of the VKViewer software. The valve tree is an interesting way to look at our valves, but we also have a more detailed way that we can work with more than one valve at once. That's called the repair list. If I decide that I want to work with the valves of a specific plant, or if I wanted to work with all the valves in my current owner, all I need to do is double click on the owner or the plant that I'm interested in all the valves for, and VKViewer opens up and puts me on the repair list. Clicking on the repair list button would perform the same function. The repair list is essentially a spreadsheet of any valves and valve events that I have interest in. Across the top of the spreadsheet are columns. These columns are the data points that come from the details forms that we saw earlier. Any data point that you want can be put into this grid. Across the very top of the spreadsheet are some buttons that allow us to affect the information being shown in the grid. Right now, for example, I'm on relief devices. If I click on the control valve icon, I switch over to my control valves. Same idea with line valves, manual valves, and electric actuators. I'm going to click back onto the relief devices. Inside of this grid, it works just like a spreadsheet does. You click on the item you're interested in. Once we're on any given repair for a valve inside of the grid, I can further investigate the parts about that repair event. I can look at the images for that repair event, and we've already seen the image command. I can take a look at generic attachments, action remarks, welds associated with it, and to-do items. This is how the top of the spreadsheet works. Over here on the left-hand side are some very important drop-downs as well. The very first one that we're going to talk about is this one in the top left, and right now it shows all repairs. If I drop this down, it shows me that I can choose between most recent and all repairs and when equipment. This is an important concept in VKViewer. Every valve has multiple events, and as we talked about earlier, the way the valve is in the field today, that would be the most recent event. When we're looking at all repairs, we're looking at all of the repairs ever to all of the valves in your plant. If I click on most recent, you'll see we went from 940 to 637. This tells me that there are 637 valves in the field today, and before in the historicals there was 940 repairs total. So this is a good indicator as to the number of repairs that are in the system versus the number of valves, and it clearly shows a difference between a most recent and historical event. These other drop downs allow me to change between the owner and the plants. And further down in this list are some buttons that allow me to manipulate the grid. I can limit the grid to anything that I want. If I was only interested in events that had images, or events that had parts replaced, or events that had a to-do item, I would do that here with this limit grid. I can access my reports. I can hit the email button, which allows me to email a question to the customer service rep at the GTC Mark or at the Dresser Direct operation. This saves you the step of having to go into your email program, open up an email, and then putting in the information that you're currently looking at, and being able to have that then sent to the GTC or Mark. So here you see the email has opened up. It's being sent to the customer service rep at the repair facility, and all of the information about the valve in question has been put into the body of the email for me. That's a nice, easy way for you to be in touch with the repair facility. We, of course, can find any valve that we would have inside of the grid. We can set the columns that are in the grid. So remember before when we were talking about the details form and all of the data points that were on the details form, you see them all here in the list. If we wanted to add something like the unit, all we would need to do is find the U's inside of the list, look for unit, click the add button, it gets added to our grid. If we want, we can move it around, and then we hit apply to apply it. At this point, we can save column configurations for use by others, and we can save column configurations so we don't have to redo them later on. Hitting apply affects the grid in that column is now added. We now see that we have our unit vessel inside of our column as well. We can access the valve calendar, analytical functions. We can set filters, which are a way for us to limit what it is we're looking at in the grid. So if you wanted to find only valves that had a smart positioner, only valves that were set over 1000 psi, only valves that had a part replaced, anything you can imagine you can filter inside of VKViewer. What other kind of functions can we perform here on our repair list? Here we can multi-select repairs. This way we can do reports or do analysis on only the repairs of interest. Here is the details button, which takes us to the details form for any given repair that we're interested in. Here in the top of the columns of the grid, we have a button, and this button, when dropped down, brings us to some functions that we can use to affect our grid. We can find, we can set the columns, we can apply a filter, we can configure pressure analysis columns, we can configure calculated date columns, we can set the sort order, and we can export to Excel or to text. This allows you to populate your ERP program with the detailed repair data that the GTC or Mark is keeping on your valves. Some of the other interesting things we can do with this spreadsheet, up here in the column of unit vessel, for example, you see at the top of the grid column there's a space where we can input an automatic filter. If I come up to there and I type in whatever I'm interested in, you will see that I automatically filter the column, in this case unit vessel, to what I've typed in this case steam. This is a really easy way for you to limit the grid to what it is that you want to see. As well, I can click the column header to sort by that column, and the drop down here allows me to see all of the data that has been input into that data point. It allows me to choose from the data items and apply a filter for it. All of those commands allow you quick and easy access to this grid's power, allowing you to find only the valves that you're interested in. Two more quick things about the spreadsheet and the repair list. First, down here in the right, you'll notice I can drop down a list that allows me to change the number of records that I'm viewing per page. That is also settable up in the user preferences command. What I really wanted to look at was this group by bar. If I click the group by bar icon, at the top of the spreadsheet, a new row is added. This row allows me to pick a column, in this case unit vessel, and drag it up into that area. Once I have done that, my data gets grouped by whatever I have drug up into that group by bar. So right now I'm grouping by unit. Let's also group it by manufacturer. And finally we'll group by inlet size. So we have the data now grouped by those three levels. If I go through my units, and let's say this one here, HBG, if I open up that unit, you'll see that there's 36 valves. Of course, those 36 valves are broken down by manufacturer. In this case, you'll see that I have 5 Axelson valves. If I open up that manufacturer, you'll see I have the different inlet sizes as well. So there's 2-inch and 4-inch valves, 4 in one of them, inside of the Axelson manufacturer, inside of that specific unit. So this group bar is a really easy way for you to take a look at your data and investigate your data in ways that will be beneficial to you. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the group by bar, returning me back to the standard repair list or spreadsheet of all of my valves. That's a pretty good introduction to the spreadsheet repair list inside of VKViewer. Let's take a quick look at the valve calendar command. Over here I'll click on valve calendar and I'm going to ask it to show me the calendar of coming due and past due valves. When the calendar opens up, you'll see that we're placed on the by calendar results. If I want, I can actually do this analysis on more than just the current equipment type that I was on. Right now we were on relief valves, and that's all I have inside of my analysis here inside my calendar. If I wanted, I could do all of my valve assets in my facility in this planning calendar, allowing me to see everything that's going on with all valves inside of my plant. Back to the calendar. Here you see that on the 20th of September there are 2 RVs coming due. On the 7th of September there were 2 RVs due. If I go back in time, and here I went back to September 2011, you'll notice that on the 30th there was 1, and on the 1st of September 2011 there were 2 relief valves that should have been repaired. Clicking on that date brings me to the grid of those valves where I have all of the functionality that we talked about previously, along with the ability to go in and take a look at the details of any valve that was past due for maintenance. I'll close that details form and I will close that list of valves. So this is the calendar view, and it allows me to go backward in time, and now I'm scrolling through 2011 up to today, which is 2012, and it allows me to go into the future and see valves that are coming due. So here in November of 2012, which is the future because right now we're in September of 2012, you'll notice that on the 7th I have 7 valves coming due. If I click on that date, again there's my grid list of the 7 valves that are coming due. So this calendar is a very visual way for you to look at and plan upcoming outages and look at past due valves and investigate why repairs weren't performed to them. The calendar is an interesting way to look at it, but what else can we do? Here on the by month result, you'll see that I have the monthly summary. So minus 79 months ago, which was 2006-02, there are still 3 relief valves that are outstanding for maintenance. Remember, I could have had all valve assets in this if I wanted. Scrolling forward in time, I can take a look at coming due valves. In 2014, 16 months from now, there's 4 relief valves due in January of 2014. If I want, I can multi-select information and I can see it there. So let's suppose that I wanted to find all of the valves that should have been maintained in 2011. I'll go to my list and I will multi-select all of the months of 2011. And once I've got them all selected, I can work with all of the valves events that should have been repaired during 2011. I've got them all selected there. I can now come up and I can view those valves, and there's the 107 valves that are past due that should have been repaired in 2011. Coming back to my valve calendar analysis results, that was the by month. The by chart is a really nice overview showing me by year, selected by year right now, by year the count of relief valves that should have been or need to be maintained. Here you see the distribution from 06 to 2016 and the count of valves that were in each of those years. That is the valve calendar command for coming due and past due. I can also have a calendar of repairs performed. So this is a great example of the kind of analytical power and planning tools that are inside of VKViewer. I close that out and I'm now back on my repair grid. For the last 2 minutes of the demo, we're going to take a look at some of the additional functionality inside of VKViewer that you should take advantage of. The locations command. What this allows you to do is this allows you to build locations inside of your facility and all of the equipment that is compatible with it. So here, for example, we have a flange named flange 11, and over here are the 6 relief valves that will work at that specific location. You can do that for control valves, you can do it for line valves, you can do it for any kind of equipment in your facility. This is a very, very easy way for you to keep track of the spares that will work and are compatible with any functional location inside of your plant. The loops command, it allows you to group together equipment that is in a single PNID or in a single protected system for PSM. So here, for example, we have PSM System 11, and we have all of the instruments and all of the equipment that is inside of that protected system. This data doesn't have to be maintained inside of ValveKeep. It can be vessel data, it can be transmitter data, it can be pump data. All this really is doing is allowing us to build a PNID loop or a protected system for PSM, and we can then manage those groups together as one. Of course, we can get to the details of the information if it was stored inside of VKViewer. Lastly, we're going to take a quick look at the turnaround cloud. Inside of ValveKeep, we're keeping detailed information about the repairs. Of course, on your end, in your plant, you do it by turnaround or by one-off repairs. When it's a turnaround, you know that there is a certain amount of valves in that turnaround, and you know which valves they are. It only makes sense that we can group together those valves and work with them as a single bunch. So here you see we have a turnaround from spring 2010. We have another turnaround from autumn 2012. This is the list of valves, and of course all of the details forms associated with the repair. This is that list, and we can now go in and we can do reports, we can see the repairs % complete, we can take a look at the as found conditions, we can take a look at any kind of reporting information we want on the valves in that turnaround. You need a status meeting update? No problem at all. You come into the turnaround cloud, you have all of the equipment in the turnaround grouped here, and you can easily print off a report of your own definition showing the as found condition, where it is in the repair process, what's left outstanding on it, any of the parts that were replaced to it. All of those details are kept inside of ValveKeep and VKViewer, and this turnaround cloud is an incredibly easy way for you to have access to that. We're back now on our valve tree, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to close out of the VKViewer program, and we're going to end this demo. It asks me if I'm leaving so soon. Please contact your local GTC, Mark, or Dresser Direct Repair Center, and they'll further explore VKViewer with you. We also have other videos on our websites and other information available for you. Thank you very much. Have a great day.